In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at some of the basics of Actionscript that you're going to use every single day. So let's create a new document, and it'll be an Actionscript 3 document. And I'm going to save this immediately before I go anywhere. So I'm going to save it as AS3Intro because that's what I have mine currently saved as, and replace it. And let's go to the Actions panel. Now, we're going to be typing out a lot of different code throughout the semester, so it's very important to understand what you're typing out and what it's for. So let's begin by doing one of the basic things that you're going to want to do a lot, and that is comment. So in order to create comments, there are two different ways. There's what's called a block comment and an inline comment, or line comment. We're going to typically use the line comment for commenting about our code, and it just begins with a double slash. You can also just click on this and it inserts a comment, or that one will remove a comment. But an inline slash like that just says whatever is to the right of that particular slash slash will be commented out and will not run as code. So we're going to begin by creating a variable. And then I can go down to the next line and you'll see it shows my line numbers. If you don't see line numbers, you can change that over in your panel or your panel menu, I guess. Now we're going to create a very simple variable for our name. We'll begin by typing out var, and you'll see var has turned blue. Now, when we have an item that's blue, it means that it's a keyword that Flash understands. If we type in something that Flash doesn't understand, it will be black. Now, we'll be using a lot of black code in here, and you'll see as we even create just the variable here in a second. But we want to make sure that those things that we intend for Flash to be able to recognize are done correctly with uppercase and lowercase sensitivity. And you'll learn a lot about this during the semester. Now, the next thing that we create after var is a little space, and then we're going to have my name. Now, two things that I want you to notice about this, or actually three. First off, it turns black, and that means that it is something that Flash doesn't recognize. Now, it will recognize it because we've preceded it with var, which says make a variable called my name. So that's pretty easy. Now, the other thing I want you to be aware of is that it has my in it at the beginning, and that's a naming convention I'm going to use during the semester to indicate things that we are creating, variables that we are creating, and functions that we are creating, not something that exists in Flash as a predefined function or variable. The next thing that we're going to put is a space, and then we're going to use an equals. Now, this is what's called an operator. And operators are used to do all sorts of stuff. We can add and subtract math, so we could have plus or minus, and we can have an assignment. An assignment operator is the equals. We can have addition and subtraction, mathematical operators, and we can even have comparison operators, and that would be the double equals. But we're going to have an assignment one here, and that means my var my name equals, and the next thing that we're going to put is quotation mark, and what this denotes is that we're going to use a string. So I'll type in Jonathan, and then end the quotation mark, and I'll put a semicolon. What the semicolon does is indicate that we are at the end of a line, we're at the end of that particular script, and then we can hit an enter and go on to the next line. Now, we don't always have to have the semicolons for things to work, but it's definitely a good idea for us to get into the habit of. Now, one of the things that we'll also see with variables is what's called strict data typing, and we'll talk about that later, but it looks kind of like this. There we go. So we have a colon and then string, and notice that string is blue and it starts with an uppercase. If I put it with a lowercase, you'll notice that it's no longer blue and it's not recognized. So it's very important for things to be typed out correctly. The next thing we're going to do is create a very simple function, and this function is going to be trace, and you'll see that functions are preceded by parentheses. Now, inside this function, right now we have nothing. So if we actually try this, nothing will happen. But in the next tutorial, we're going to go ahead and use that function and apply something to it. So go on from now.